Welcome to Ask Psych Sessions, where we ask some of the best teachers we know questions from you, our audience. If you would like to submit a question, please go to bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. That's bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. All lowercase, all one word. And here's our next question. We had such a positive response to our mini-series on online teaching a few months back that we wanted to follow up with a series of what it was like to go online or to do remote teaching for people who had never done it before. Marianne Lloyd had this great idea, and we thought it was worth pursuing. So, special thanks to Marianne, who went and found 6 of the best teachers we know to see what this transition was like for them. And this will be brought to you over 3 weeks, 6 episodes, 6 interviews. Here we go. Enjoy Ask Psych Sessions with Marianne Lloyd.
Thanks for tuning in again to the next episode in our series with faculty members who were new to making a jump into distance or online learning. Today, I'm speaking with Clarissa Sawyer from Bentley University. Thanks for joining us, Clarissa.
You're welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
So before we talk about how your semester went, it would be helpful for me and the listeners to just get a sense about what you were teaching, how many students were in these classes, and maybe a little bit about the type of university that Bentley is. I'll admit that I'm not familiar with it.
Sure. So the courses that I needed to convert this semester were 2 sections of adult development and aging for undergraduate students, and there's about 30 students per class, and 2 sections of pioneers of psychology, which is the equivalent of history of psychology, but again, since we don't have a psychology major, only a psychology minor, and I'll get into why in a second. So just to give you some context of that. So only 30 students per class, but needing to convert them. So I got a lot of experience pretty quickly in learning to use Zoom for sure. And a little bit about my institution. So Bentley University is a private institution founded in 1917. It has a total undergraduate enrollment of about 4,200. It's in the suburbs. It uses a semester-based calendar, and it's ranked in the 2020 edition of Best Colleges as for regional universities north. Its ranking is number 2. It's a business university, so that makes it a little different.
That is different. I don't know anything about what it means to be at a business university, but that helps explain why you have the minor instead of a full major.
Right.
So is it a popular major with business students? It seems like it might be.
Yes, it's the most popular minor on campus is a psychology minor. So at my university, students have business majors. So they're majoring in marketing, management, accounting, finance, actuarial science. We also have what are called liberal studies majors, and they're kind of a second major that you can get for no additional cost that are a little bit more like interdisciplinary. So you can get one in health and industry in my department, which is where you take courses in psychology plus courses in healthcare and the business of healthcare. And that would run side by side with whatever your business major is. So it's a nice add-on for students. And there's other kinds of liberal studies majors, such as maybe global studies or user experience, things like that.
That's great. I'm sure that I'm not alone, that a lot of chatter around being more cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary is happening at my institution. So maybe I will do some more poking around at what you're doing, because that does sound very appealing, especially the health piece. So are those, so students, maybe let's talk about the adult and aging development course.
Sure.
First. Although pioneers of psychology, that's talk about good marketing for a history of psych class. But yeah, so what did you do with the aging and adult class? I'm going to guess that maybe you had to cover death and dying, which I would just think is not a topic that I would necessarily want to have to do online as opposed to in person. Yeah, maybe sort of talk us through what went really great, or if you had any sort of, ooh, wish I could have done something different for that class.
Yes. So at the time that we shifted to online, it came after what had been our spring break. And then we extended the spring break by an additional week to give us time to learn how to use Zoom, which was what our university chose. And we were given two kinds of training. So one was just for faculty in using Zoom, and the person who trained us was from our academic technology center. She's kind of a Zoom ambassador, but she knows a lot more than just Zoom. And so we got a full hour of training in that. And then we also had additional there were two faculty, someone who teaches regularly online as part of a master's and undergraduate in accounting, and she's an award-winning professor in accounting, very experienced in online. And then she was complemented by someone who is from our teaching and learning center. And so they partnered together to give a second online seminar. And then there were lots of kind of self-help checklists and fact sheets, but we were given the bare minimum to get started, and then we were left to our own devices, just as a background. So in adult development and aging, they were coming back from 2 weeks, and it was the second half of the semester. We had one less teaching week, so I made the decision to omit death and dying, which occurs as the last chapter in the textbook that I use. And I also believe that psychologically, that was not a good place to leave people at the end of the semester, death and dying. And that was just a decision that I made, because I needed to cut out a whole week's worth of teaching. And after teaching 2 weeks of classes, so the courses meet twice a week for an hour and 20 minutes each. And after teaching my students for 2 weeks, I realized we were all completely exhausted. I had learned that some faculty were switching to a model where there was 1 day a week of kind of lecture teaching, and the other day was just open as kind of virtual office hours. I know there's a lot of different ways people can parse it out, but we were advised, just keep it simple. When you design a course from scratch that's online, it's a whole different thing. So you're not going to meet that bar. So just, adapt it as best you can. And I do a lot to gather feedback from my students. So from the very beginning, one of the things we were told in our training and came from the advice of Flower Darby, who has an excellent book that we were allowed to order, and the university paid for it, called Small Teaching Online. And I read that book, as well as she has a great article that is summarizing the book that's, I think, on the Chronicle. And it really helped shift my understanding of online, because I came, like many faculty who are, and I'm of an older generation. I kind of went to graduate school in the 80s and 90s. So we were just starting to use computers to do assignments, let alone online and PowerPoint and all that. So it was a big shift. And but the training I got, plus reading Flower Darby's book, really talked about the importance of creating this kind of intimacy, a sense of presence. I already do that. I have a strong background, having worked prior to returning to academe and teaching full-time, working for about 20 years as a consultant, organization development consultant. So working with teams and leaders to help them be more effective. And so that requires a lot of facilitation and acknowledging emotions and things like that. So have that under my belt. So it really aligned with my kind of pedagogical views. And so that helped me to realize that it was really important to check in with students from the very beginning. Like on the first day of returning to class, I really focused it as kind of a little bit of an opportunity to do a real check-in, like, what is your emotional mood today? And I used one of those little polls that had sort of a mental health check-in poll. I put them into breakout groups, and I explained to them, today we're going to practice using Zoom, and we're going to share with each other just kind of where we're at. So that was the first day of class. And then I also laid out what the changes were in the syllabus that I planned to make. And then the second day of class, the first week, was kind of a regular attempt at a lecture like I might have done in the past. I wasn't somebody who took the time to convert my lectures, my PowerPoint slides, with a lecture video track to it. That was an additional step that I felt I didn't have time to make because I teach 4 courses. So what I discovered was I needed to tweak to sort of shorten the lecture part, have breakout groups, have polls, use the chat box. So learning how to use all of those tools was a really steep learning curve, but it does kind of relate to what we know about how people learn anyway, that about every 10 minutes you need to shift to somewhat of a different activity. It's just you're trying to manage it all online. So I'm not sure if I've answered what you wanted me to in terms of adult development and learning, because I'm kind of blending it with talking about general observations I've had in making the shift.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I see a couple of, important kind of nuggets there that were consistent when we did the first series about sort of, well, how do you even jump in online? And those were things I heard, right? Be deliberate about choices, still consider, the socio-emotional needs of your students, know your own barriers and limits, right? If you're a famous YouTuber already, it's probably easy to just turn your classes into recordings. But if you haven't at all, right, learning how to use that chat box and still making the class interactive. So no, I think that's really, those are a lot of real positives. Do you have anything that didn't go well, or you're good 20 did you say 20 years in consulting, whatever years you said in consulting, that you sort of know the big pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, well, just I want to put in a plug here for the Ask Psych podcast episode that had all those interviews with making the switch online. I did listen to that as well. So that was another piece of my kind of input prior to starting teaching. But things that didn't work well, like I noticed that week 1, students had their videos turned on. They were all like so happy to be back, and connecting. Students were in different locations. Some were at home. Some were still living on campus because there are some international students, or for other circumstances, they were unable to return home. Some were quarantined in intermediate places, like there are students who returned to China and they had to go into quarantine. So there were students who just didn't even take part in the live classes, and that's where Zoom is helpful in videotaping them. Recording and videotaping them. And we were told we needed to do that. But that was challenging. That was a thing that was difficult, is like suddenly up to maybe a third of students were now not in the class. So you don't see them. You wonder how they are. I made a point of sending out a student survey based on some ideas from somebody on the the Teaching of Psychology Facebook page, which is such a great resource. And I sent that survey out this week before they were to come back. And then after teaching for 1 week and still feeling like some of the information I had was they're emotionally really stressed, I sent out a second kind of more informal the Saturday after the first week of teaching and just asked, how are you feeling? Like, really, I really want to know how you're feeling. And I had about 27 students out of my total group of 120 students, because I teach 4 classes of 30 students each, respond. So what I learned is that some of them were under very serious, stressful situations. Their parents had COVID. a close family friend had COVID and they were really worried about them, or they were just really unmotivated. The students who were seniors, they were just devastated that they were just not going to be able to have all those fun things that seniors look forward to, which at my university, students actually go down to the Bahamas for a trip. I don't know how it's
Wow.
all funded, but we're talking about a private university here that some of the students' family are very well-to-do. International students as well as U.S. students, like, parents work on Wall Street, things like that. But by no means all of them. So that was another whole thing, is just learning how to deal with mood. And so while the first week they were really engaged and kind of eager, week 2, and I was keeping to the same model of 2 classes a week, I noticed a real kind of like exhaustion, and people start turning off the video screen. And I read in different places online whether to demand students keep them on or allow them to keep them off, and all the reasons why students might opt to have the video off. So I didn't demand that they keep the video on, but it did feel sometimes like you're talking to these little black boxes with just a name in it. So connecting, I think, was the challenge, was really how to keep them connected, because they were starting to feel really exhausted. Some of them have like 4 classes in a row on Zoom in a day. So exhausting. So once I learned that at the end of week 2, that was when I knew I need to make the shift to having 1 day a week is a class. But that meant I kind of had to collapse all the content into one. And then the second what would have been class time is just a video office hours. And a few students did take me up on it. There was one student in one of my classes, we basically met every Thursday for a kind of like chat, and that was really sweet. So that's adult development and aging, as well as the pioneers of psychology, aka history of psych. Kind of it worked that way for both, having to consolidate topics, shift to a 1 live class a week format, and then just kind of hope that the assignments and other activities planned worked. I knew that they couldn't keep all their focus, but remarkably, I think because of the types of assignments that I had towards the end of the semester, I think it kept them engaged to some extent. And you have to know, I am not somebody who does quizzes and exams, full stop, period. I don't do them.
Okay.
They're not part of my they were never part of my really undergraduate or graduate school. I mean, I went to graduate school, the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So pedagogy is a big deal there. And it was just not something that was really done. Most of my courses were about, kind of apply the theory to your own life or some sort of an area of practice and make sense of it that way, rather than here's an exam. So and that was something at my university that students really appreciated, because they feel so bombarded by exams and quizzes. So again, what I had as final assignments were in adult development and aging. They had already done earlier in the semester interviewing 2 older adults about their awareness of age-related change. And that's a whole area of research. And there's kind of a set of questions you ask people, and there's a way to code your data from that. And then when they came back, they needed to do kind of one of the culminating assignments is writing a guided autobiography using the work of, I think it's Dan McAdams from the Foley Center for the Study of Lives. And it's kind of it's a big website that has all their protocols from their longitudinal research on adult development. So I thought that would be a great assignment for students to do. And there's a set of 10 questions, and they kind of unfold, and they're asking students to recall like a peak experience, a turning point, a low point, things like that. And then they were asked to code their own answers. So an assignment like that, it's not an exam, and every student gets full points for doing it. Because how are you going to grade somebody's autobiography? Really? So I thought that would be a helpful, less stressful kind of thing to do. And certainly grading it is easy because I just kind of read and then I make comments about their autobiographical life, themes and patterns. But I'm not like grading how they did it. Is kind of, that the philosophy behind it. So I think that was helpful as a way of connecting. And I also pretty soon got feedback from students, and partly as a result of that second email that I sent out after the end of the first week of class, where I'm asking them, really, really tell me how you feel, because everybody, and I explained myself, I'm struggling with different emotions too. And I just really want to know so I can be of support to you. So I learned from their reply to that and other kinds of emails that I would get from students, they would say to me, you're the only professor that really cares. The other ones say they care, but they don't act like it.
Mm.
And what they meant by that when I would ask them is, well, they haven't really modified the assignments. Some of them are really trying to teach the very same way they did live, but in class, face-to-face, but it doesn't work when you're online. So someone talked, for example, about a professor teaching a computer programming class that he would cold call students in the class. And this student telling me this was a female student who felt very insecure and put on the spot. So I would then take feedback like that and share it with the academic and student affairs, the head of that, the director of that. So because my university does a really good job in trying to step in and give feedback where needed, and especially under these circumstances, because as a private university, one of the big things they know is like, oh my gosh, we need to keep students feeling positively about the university, because just in terms of enrollments, they were already looking ahead to projections and things like that. And they're like, oh my gosh, we might see this big drop off in enrollment. So there's a lot of moving parts. And part of it is keep students feeling connected and that they really value their relationship with their professors. So I knew all that in the background, along with that just kind of being my personality, that I do really care. So I don't know if there's more you want to know about the adult development and aging.
No, I actually think that you've given us lots and lots of both sort of small things to work on and then just broader things to contemplate, like what role are my exams serving? And if that I don't feel like they're translating well online, what can I do as an alternative assignment that still allows students to demonstrate understanding without having that pressure piece and just that constant, sort of checking in, and that your actions should meet your words. If you say you care, make sure that they can tell. So no, this has been super engaging, Clarissa. I really appreciate it. And I wish you a great summer. And thanks so much for chatting.
All right. Thanks for asking me. Take care.
You too.